this is Colleen McGee welcoming you to our Veterans Day edition of Fort Riley, the podcast. We are going back in history and listening to a couple of stories saved in the Library of Congress as part of the Veterans History Project. Our first veteran is Benjamin Alvarado, born in 1924 in Kansas City, Kansas. He served from 1943 to 1945, and some of that was with the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. Alvarado was among those who landed at Normandy during the second wave on D-Day. We're listening to an excerpt from an interview that was done in 2004 about his experience when he first joined the Army.
I was drafted. It was on July. I think it was July.
Do you remember where you reported in?
Yes. I went to Camp Fannin near Tyler, Texas.
Tell us about some of your experience with basic training.
Well, we trained hand-to-hand combat, trained in case we were attacked by tanks, how we were to survive. We went through the infiltration course. We went through the course where they would shoot live ammunition and we had to stay down.
Had you fired a rifle prior to military service?
Yes.
Or was that your first experience?
No, I did fire 22.
Okay.
For hunting.
Were you a pretty good shot?
Yeah, I thought I was.
Uh-huh. Were you rated as a sharpshooter?
Sharpshooter.
What other weapons did you fire?
I fired the BAR. I tried it for mortar, and learned how to throw a hand grenade, and also learned how to take the weapon off of another person, that's got a bayonet, and then in case there's no more weapon. No.
And boot camp, were you 17, 8?
I was 18.
18 years old.
Yeah.
You remember any of the instructors? Anybody stand out in your mind?
No, I remember their actions. I know there was a corporal there. He was pretty rough on me.
He was?
Yeah, he was. Well, we'd be going forced marches, and I'd be wrestling with other kids, on a break. Mm-hmm. And one day he says, Alvarado, you seem like you have a lot of pep. Here, carry my pack. I want a forced march.
So you carried 2 packs.
Yeah, I carried my pack and his pack too.
Yeah. And
I didn't like that because I was tired already.
Back in your days in the military service, do you remember what your military job was when you completed basic training?
Yeah, I was a rifleman.
Rifleman.
Mm-hmm.
You had probably had an M1 rifle back then, did you not?
I ran an M1 rifle.
Right. That was a fine weapon.
Very good.
So did you feel that the training was adequate at the time that was preparing you for combat?
Well, not for what I went through. We were, after the basic training, then I was sent to Camp House, Texas. And there I was there about 3 months. Well, one day, the sergeant came over and they wanted some volunteers to go overseas. And I didn't know, what that all meant, going overseas. I'd never been anywhere. But
sure.
So anyway, nobody said anything. So anyway, he says, Alvarado, how about you joining? Going overseas. I said, well, I'll go when my turn comes. He says, well, your turn has come. Get your things ready. Mm-hmm. So I volunteered to go overseas. Well, that's when I joined the First Army to go on D-Day.
Now, where did you join the First Army?
In England.
Transferred to England, and what time of year did you arrive there?
Around April.
And did you have continued training while in England, or?
Well, there were mostly lectures, and I can remember, falling asleep in one of those. I think he was a major or somebody was giving the lecture, and he was the one that's pointing to me. He says, "Wake that man up." And the guy next to me gave me a nudge, which I woke up and says, "Hey, you, come here." So I said, "Me? Yeah, you come here." So anyway, I had to go to the front and stand there watching and listening to the lecture.
I think that's standard procedure for people falling asleep.
From England, Alvarado would go on to fight in France and Germany before returning to the Kansas City area. To hear more about his time in service, visit the Library of Congress Veterans History Project and search for Benjamin Alvarado. Our next veteran is Van Thomas Barfoot, who served in World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and earned the Medal of Honor for action near Serrano, Italy on May 23, 1941. Barfoot's military career included time spent with the 1st Infantry Division.
I decided that I ought to go someplace else and find work. So I went over to Delta, worked a while with some people that was in the logging business. And I did work that grown men wouldn't do. They'd have boys doing 8, 20, and 19 years old. And this didn't sit with me very well, so I came back home, and on my way back home, I was listening to the radio and reading the newspaper, and World War II was just coming. And it talked about drafting young men. I began to think, well, I don't want to be drafted in anything, so I went down to the recruiting officer and asked him if he had a job. And he said, yes, we do. And so I went back home, and he said, but you'll have to get your mother or father to approve you're going in. You're not old enough to us to enlist you. So I went back, and Mother had a hard time signing her name. And she did, and about 6 months later, I was in the 40s. Yeah, in the 40s.
You
June
joined
or
in
so.
1940.
Huh?
You joined in 1940, the Army.
Yeah, I actually joined the Army to keep from being drafted when the draft was coming up. They talked about the draft in 40, and they started it. But I enlisted about March. I don't remember the exact date. And they sent me to Fort McClellan, Alabama. Then they sent me to the division that I would go with, the 1st Division, and I spent learning how to be a soldier there.
So you were with the Big Red One initially. Tell
Yes.
us about some experiences with the Big
But
Red
the
One.
very first unit that I was in was Big Red One. I never went through any training camp. I didn't go through any special program like most of the draftees went through, or people drafted. I was trained with a few other soldiers like myself that enlisted, and we had a sergeant, Sergeant Pete Grants. He was a major in World War I. Took a enlisted job, stayed in, and in World War II, they brought him back in as a major, and he was in charge of the training. And so I did all of my basic training with the 1st Infantry Division, a group of men in all the companies. And I think that's probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Our veterans come from all walks of life. Some served a full career and gathered retirement. Some served for only a short time. Some of them gave what our country asked for during times of conflict, and some served during peace. But all of them paved a path for us and contributed to the defense of our nation. On this Veterans Day, we say thank you for your service. And thank you for listening to Fort Riley, the podcast.